Ladies and gentlemen, right now, in this very moment, there is someone sitting in this audience who doesn't believe in themselves. There's someone here who looks in the mirror every single morning and sees a failure. Someone who has convinced themselves that they are not enough, that they will never be enough, that the dreams they once had as a child are nothing more than foolish fantasies that were never meant to come true. And I want to tell you something right now, something that might make you uncomfortable, something that might even make you angry. But I need you to hear it. That person I'm talking about might be you. And the story you've been telling yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve in this life, that story is a lie. I didn't come here today to make you feel good. I didn't come here to pat you on the back and tell you that everything is going to be okay if you just think positive thoughts and wish upon a star. I came here today to shatter the illusion, to break the mirror that's been showing you a distorted reflection of yourself for far too long. Because the truth is, you have been lied to. You have been lied to by people who were supposed to build you up. You have been lied to by a society that profits from your insecurity. You have been lied to by your own mind, which has become so comfortable in the prison of limiting beliefs that it would rather stay locked up than risk the uncertainty of freedom. But today, that ends. Today, we're going to take a journey together, and I promise you, if you really hear what I'm about to share with you, if you let these words sink deep into your soul, you will never see yourself the same way again. Because the person you think you are and the person you're actually capable of becoming are two completely different people. And the distance between them, that distance is built entirely out of the stories you tell yourself. Let me tell you about a man I met 5 years ago. His name was David, and when I first encountered him, he was living in his car, not because he had lost his job recently, not because of some sudden catastrophe, but because he had given up. He had given up on himself so completely, so thoroughly, that he had accepted homelessness as his permanent reality. David wasn't always this way. He had dreams once, big dreams. He wanted to be a teacher, wanted to inspire young minds, wanted to make a difference. But somewhere along the way, life knocked him down. His wife left him. His mother passed away. He lost his job. And with each blow, the voice in his head grew louder. The voice that said, "You see, you're worthless. You're a failure. You don't deserve anything good." I sat with David in a coffee shop and I asked him a simple question. I said, "David, who are you?" And you know what he said to me? He looked down at his coffee, his hands shaking slightly, and he said, "I'm nobody. I'm just a guy who couldn't make it work." And in that moment, I realized something profound. David wasn't homeless because of his circumstances. David was homeless because of his identity. He had become so identified with his failures, so merged with his pain, that he couldn't see where his circumstances ended and where he began. I want you to understand something crucial right now. You are not your circumstances. You are not your bank account. You are not your job title. You are not the car you drive or the house you live in. You are not even your past. You are not the mistakes you've made, the opportunities you've missed, or the people who have rejected you. Those are all things that have happened to you or around you, but they are not you. And until you separate your identity from your circumstances, you will remain trapped in a prison of your own making. Think about this for a moment. When you were born, you didn't come into this world with limiting beliefs. You didn't emerge from your mother's womb thinking, "I'm not good enough," or "I can't do this," or "I don't deserve success." No. You came into this world as pure potential, as unlimited possibility. You were fearless. When you were learning to walk, you fell down hundreds of times. Hundreds of times! But did you ever look up at your parents and say, "You know what? Walking is not for me. I'm just not a walking kind of person. I'm going to crawl for the rest of my life"? Of course not. You got back up. Every single time. You got back up because you hadn't yet learned to doubt yourself. You hadn't yet been conditioned to see failure as a permanent state rather than a temporary event. But then something happened. You grew up. you went to school, you entered society, and slowly, gradually, like a fog rolling in, you began to absorb the limitations of the people around you. Your teacher told you that you weren't good at math, so you decided you were not a math person. Your parent, operating from their own pain and limitation, told you to be realistic and stop dreaming so much. Your friends laughed at your ambitions, so you learned to keep them hidden. And piece by piece, year by year, you built a false self, a limited self, a self that was designed to keep you safe, but that has actually kept you small. The American author Anas Nin once wrote, "We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are." Let that sink in for a moment. You don't see things as they are, you see them as you are. Your perception of reality is not reality itself. It's reality filtered through the lens of your beliefs, your experiences, your fears, and your conditioning. And if you believe you are limited, if you believe you are not capable, if you believe you are not deserving, then that is exactly what you will see when you look at the world. Not because it's true, but because your beliefs have become the lens through which you view everything. I want to take you back to David for a moment, because his story doesn't end in that coffee shop. After we talked, I gave him a challenge. I said, "David, for the next 30 days, I want you to do something radical. Every morning when you wake up, before you do anything else, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and I want you to say out loud, 'I am not my circumstances. I am a powerful creator. I am capable of extraordinary things.' And then I want you to spend 5 minutes writing down who you want to become, not who you think you are." David looked at me like I was insane. He said, "That's not going to change anything. I'm still going to be living in my car. I'm still going to be broke. I'm still going to be alone." And I said to him, "You're absolutely right. For the first few days, nothing will change externally, but something will start to shift internally. And that internal shift is where all transformation begins." David was skeptical, but he was also desperate. And desperate people are willing to try things that comfortable people would dismiss. So he did it. Every single morning for 30 days, he looked in the mirror and declared a new identity. And you know what started to happen? At first, nothing. The first week, he felt ridiculous. He felt like he was lying to himself. But he kept going. And then around day 10, something strange started to occur. He began to notice opportunities that had always been there but that he had been blind to. A help wanted sign at a local grocery store. A community college offering free courses for displaced workers. A shelter that provided job training programs. Were these new opportunities? No, they had always existed. But David's perception of himself had changed. And when his perception changed, his ability to see possibilities changed. Within 60 days, David had a job. Within 6 months, he had a small apartment. Within a year, he had enrolled in community college to pursue his teaching credential. And when I saw him 2 years after our first meeting, he was student teaching at a high school, and the light in his eyes was something I will never forget. He looked at me and said, "I didn't change my circumstances. I changed my identity, and my circumstances followed." This is the key that will unlock everything in your life. You must change your identity before you can change your reality. Most people try to do it backwards. They say, "I'll believe I'm successful when I become successful. I'll believe I'm confident when I have reasons to be confident. I'll believe I'm worthy when the world treats me as worthy." But that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. Your external reality is always a reflection of your internal reality. You don't become confident because you succeed. You succeed because you've decided to be confident. You don't become worthy when you achieve something. You achieve something because you've decided you're worthy of it. Let me ask you a question right now, and I want you to really think about this. Who would you be if you weren't afraid? Who would you be if you didn't care what anyone thought about you? Who would you be if you knew with absolute certainty that you could not fail? Close your eyes for just a moment, if you're comfortable doing so, and really see that person. See the way they walk into a room. See the way they speak. See the way they handle challenges. See the way they love themselves. See the way they pursue their dreams without hesitation or apology. Can you see that person? Now here's the truth that's going to shake you to your core. That person you just imagined. That person is not some future version of you that you might become if everything goes right. That person is who you actually are right now. Underneath all the fear, underneath all the doubt, underneath all the conditioning, that person is your true self. And every single day that you live as anything less than that person, you are betraying yourself at the deepest level. I know that sounds harsh. I know that might hurt to hear. But sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. And we've gotten so comfortable with comfortable lies that we've forgotten the power of uncomfortable truth. The comfortable lie says, you're doing your best. You can't help it if things didn't work out. It's not your fault. The uncomfortable truth says, you're capable of so much more than you're giving. You've been playing small, you've been settling, and deep down you know it. There's a story I want to share with you about a woman named Maya Angelou. Before she became one of the most celebrated poets and authors in American history, before she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, before she became the voice of a generation, Maya Angelou was silent. Literally silent. At the age of 8, she was sexually assaulted. And when her attacker was murdered shortly after, she believed that her voice had killed him. So she stopped speaking. For 5 years, this brilliant, gifted child did not speak a single word. She believed that her voice was dangerous, that she was dangerous, that the best thing she could do for the world was to remain silent. But there was a teacher in her life, a woman named Bertha Flowers, who refused to accept Maya's silence. Mrs. Flowers told her something profound. She said, words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with the shades of deeper meaning. She showed Maya that her voice wasn't a weapon. It was a gift. And slowly, gradually, Maya began to speak again. And when she finally found her voice, she didn't just speak. She sang, she roared. She became one of the most powerful voices of the 20th century. What's the point of this story? The point is this: what you believe about yourself determines what you express in the world. Maya Angelou believed her voice was dangerous, so she silenced herself. And in doing so, she almost denied the world the gift of her genius. How many of you right now are silencing yourself? How many of you have gifts, talents, dreams? Ideas that you're keeping locked away because you've decided that you're not good enough, that people will judge you, that you'll probably fail anyway, so why bother trying? Let me tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. The world doesn't need more silent people. The world doesn't need more people playing small, hiding their light, pretending to be less than they are, so that others can feel comfortable. The world needs you to step into your power. The world needs your voice, your gifts, your unique contribution. And every day that you hold back, every day that you let fear make your decisions, you're not just robbing yourself, you're robbing all of us. I want to talk now about something that might be the most important concept in this entire speech. It's the concept of identity versus behavior. Most people think that behavior creates identity. They think, I'll start acting confident when I feel confident. I'll start acting successful when I become successful. But the psychological research is absolutely clear on this. Identity drives behavior far more powerfully than behavior drives identity. In other words, you don't act your way into a new way of being. You be your way into a new way of acting. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you want to become a writer. Now, most people approach this as a behavioral change. They say, I'm going to start writing every day, and eventually, if I write enough, I'll become a writer. But here's the problem with that approach. As soon as things get difficult, as soon as you hit writer's block or receive rejection, or feel like your writing isn't good enough, you stop. Because your identity is not that of a writer. Your identity is still that of someone who is trying to write. But imagine a different approach. Imagine if, right now, today, you decided I am a writer. Not I'm trying to be a writer, Not I hope to be a writer someday, but I am a writer. When you claim that identity, everything changes. Writers write. That's what they do. So if you are a writer, then writing is not something you have to force yourself to do. It's simply an expression of who you are. And when you hit obstacles, you don't quit, because writers don't quit writing. They push through, they grow, they evolve. But they don't stop being writers. This principle applies to everything. Do you want to be healthy? Then you must decide right now, I am a healthy person. Healthy people make healthy choices. It's not a struggle. It's not a negotiation. It's simply an expression of identity. Do you want to be successful? Then decide right now, I am a successful person. Successful people take successful actions. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They simply do what successful people do because that's who they are. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but that's not true. I'm not successful. I'm not healthy. I'm not a writer or an entrepreneur or whatever else I want to be. Isn't that just lying to myself? And this is where we need to understand something profound about the nature of truth. There are two kinds of truth in this world. There is the truth of what is, and there is the truth of what can be. Most people live their entire lives focused only on what is. They look at their current circumstances and they say, this is the truth. This is reality. And they're right, but they're only seeing half of the picture. The truth of what can be is just as real, just as valid, just as true as the truth of what is. Right now, you might be broke, but you have the capacity to become wealthy. Right now, you might be out of shape, but you have the capacity to become healthy. Right now, you might be struggling, but you have the capacity to thrive. And when you claim the identity of who you can be, you're not lying. You're declaring a deeper truth, a more important truth. You're declaring the truth of your potential. There was a study done at Harvard University where they took hotel housekeepers and divided them into two groups. The first group was simply told to keep doing their jobs as they always had. The second group was told something different. They were told that the work they did cleaning hotel rooms was actually excellent exercise, that it burned calories, that it was equivalent to a workout at the gym. That's it. That was the only difference. Same job, same physical activity. But one group now saw their work through a different lens. What happened? After just 4 weeks, the second group had lost weight. Their body fat percentage had decreased. Their blood pressure had improved. But here's the thing, they hadn't changed their behavior at all. They were doing the exact same work they had always done. The only thing that changed was their perception of what that work meant. They began to see themselves as people who exercised regularly, and their bodies responded accordingly. Do you understand the implications of this? Your body, your mind, your entire being responds to the story you tell yourself about who you are. This isn't woo-woo positive thinking nonsense. This is scientific fact. Your beliefs create your biology. Your thoughts shape your reality. And if you've been telling yourself a story of limitation, of inadequacy, of unworthiness, then your entire life has been organizing itself around that story. But here's the beautiful, magnificent, life-changing truth. You can change the story right now. Right now, not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when your circumstances improve. Right now, in this very moment, you can decide to tell a different story. You can decide that the person you've been is not the person you are. That was just a character you were playing, a role you were acting out. But you're done with that role now. You're ready to step into the truth of who you really are. I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes, and it's from the poet Rumi. He said, "You were born with wings, why prefer to crawl through life?" Read that again. You were born with wings? Not, you can earn wings if you work hard enough. Not, you might develop wings if you're lucky. You were born with wings. They're already there. The capacity for greatness, for joy, for abundance, for love, for success, it's already inside you. It's always been inside you. You just forgot. You just got so used to crawling that you convinced yourself that crawling was all you were capable of. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a young man named Marcus. Marcus came up to me after one of my speeches, and he was angry. Not at me, but at himself. He said, "I've wasted so much time. I'm 35 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years working a job I hate, living a life I don't want, being a person I don't recognize. How do I get those years back? How do I forgive myself for all that wasted time?" And I looked at him and I said, "Marcus, you can't get those years back. They're gone. But here's what you can do. You can decide right now that those 15 years were not wasted. They were preparation. They were the exact lessons you needed to learn to become the person you're about to become. Every painful moment, every disappointment, every time you felt stuck, all of it was shaping you, molding you, preparing you for this moment right now. The moment where you finally say, enough. I'm done playing small. I'm done living someone else's idea of who I should be. I'm done betraying myself. It's time to rise." And you know what Marcus did? He quit his job within a month. He started the business he had been dreaming about for years. And the last time I heard from him, he was happier than he had been in decades. Not because everything was perfect, not because success came easily, but because he was finally being himself. He was finally aligned with his true identity. This is what I want for you. Not some fantasy version of success where everything is easy and you never face challenges. I want you to experience the profound peace and power that comes from being in alignment with who you truly are. Because let me tell you something, a poor man who is being himself is richer than a millionaire who is living a lie. A struggling artist who is expressing their truth is more successful than a corporate executive who has sold their soul for a paycheck. Success is not about how much money you have or how impressive your title is. Success is about becoming who you were meant to be. But here's the thing about transformation, it requires you to die. Not literally, of course, but metaphorically. The old you, the limited you, the fearful you, that version has to die for the new you to be born. And death, even metaphorical death, is terrifying. This is why most people never transform. They get right to the edge of breakthrough, right to the moment where they could step into their power, and they back away. Because stepping into your power requires you to let go of the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. There's a phenomenon in psychology called the devil you know. It's the idea that people would rather stay with familiar suffering than risk unfamiliar possibility. They would rather stay in the toxic relationship they know than risk the uncertainty of being alone. They would rather stay in the dead end job they know than risk the uncertainty of pursuing their dreams. They would rather stay with the limited identity they know than risk the uncertainty of discovering who they truly are. But I want to ask you something. What if the uncertainty is where the magic lives? What if the discomfort is the doorway to everything you've ever wanted? What if the fear you feel is not a warning sign, but an invitation? An invitation to grow, to expand, to become more than you've ever been before. Think about the butterfly. Before a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it doesn't just grow wings and fly away. No, it goes into a cocoon, and inside that cocoon, it literally dissolves. It becomes soup, complete and total dissolution. And in that darkness, in that uncertainty, in that dissolution, the butterfly is born. But imagine if the caterpillar knew what was coming. Imagine if it knew that it would have to completely dissolve to become what it was meant to be. Would it still enter the cocoon? Or would it say, you know what? I'm good being a caterpillar. Sure, I can't fly, but at least I know who I am. You are in the cocoon right now. Maybe you don't realize it, but you are. You're in that space between who you've been and who you're becoming. And it's uncomfortable, it's uncertain, it's scary. But the dissolution is necessary. The old identity must dissolve for the new one to emerge. And on the other side of this dissolution, on the other side of this fear, there is a version of you that can fly. I want to talk about something now that nobody likes to discuss, but it's crucial, the cost of not changing. We always talk about the risk of transformation, about what you might lose if you go for your dreams. But we never talk about what you definitely will lose if you don't. If you continue to live as a fraction of who you truly are, if you continue to let fear make your decisions, if you continue to betray yourself every single day by playing small, what will that cost you? It will cost you your joy, your passion, your aliveness, your self-respect, your peace of mind, and ultimately it will cost you your life. Not all at once, but slowly, gradually, one compromised day at a time. You'll wake up one day and you'll be old and you'll look back on your life and you'll realize that you never really lived. You existed, you survived, you got through it, but you never really lived. And that realization will be more painful than any failure you ever could have experienced. There's a nurse in Australia named Bronnie Ware who spent years working in palliative care, taking care of people in the last weeks of their lives. And she wrote a book about the top 5 regrets of the dying. Do you know what the number 1 regret was? It wasn't, I wish I had worked less, or I wish I had traveled more, though those were on the list. The number 1 regret was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Let that sink in. The number 1 regret of people on their deathbed is that they didn't have the courage to be themselves. They spent their entire lives living for other people, trying to meet other people's expectations, trying to be who they thought they should be instead of who they truly were. And now, at the end, when there's no more time left, they finally see the truth. It was all a waste. All those years of pretending, of hiding, of playing it safe, they accomplished nothing except a life half-lived. I don't want that for you. I refuse to accept that for you. You are too important, too valuable, too needed in this world to spend your life playing a role that was never meant for you. And the time to change is not someday. It's not next year. It's not when you feel ready. It's now. Right now. This moment is the only moment you have. This moment is where your power lives. You want to know the secret that successful people know that unsuccessful people don't. Here it is. Successful people act before they feel ready. They move before they have all the answers. They start before they feel confident. Because they understand something crucial. You will never feel completely ready. You will never have all the answers. You will never feel completely confident before you begin. Those feelings come after action, not before. Think about the first time you did anything significant in your life. The first time you drove a car, were you confident? No, you were terrified. But you did it anyway, and the confidence came through doing it. The first time you kissed someone, did you know exactly what you were doing? No, you figured it out. The first time you spoke in public, were you calm and collected? No, you were probably shaking, but you did it. And each time you do something despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, you prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you thought. This is how you build a new identity. Not through affirmations alone, though those help. Not through visualization alone, though that's powerful. You build a new identity through action, through evidence. Every time you do something that the old you wouldn't have done, you're gathering evidence for the new you. Every time you speak up when the old you would have stayed silent, you're becoming someone new. Every time you try when the old you would have quit, you're building a new identity. And here's what's beautiful about this. The actions don't have to be big. They don't have to be dramatic. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow or move across the country or make some grand gesture. You just have to start making different choices. Small choices. Daily choices. Choices that align with who you want to become rather than who you've been. Let me give you some concrete examples. Let's say you want to become a confident person. What do confident people do? They make eye contact. They speak clearly. They take up space. They don't apologize for existing. So start there. Start making eye contact with people when you talk to them. Start speaking up in meetings instead of staying silent. Start taking up space instead of making yourself small. These are tiny actions, but they're powerful because they're sending a message to your subconscious mind. I am becoming someone new. Or let's say you want to become a healthy person. What do healthy people do? They move their bodies. They eat food that nourishes them. They prioritize sleep. They manage stress. So start there. You don't have to run a marathon tomorrow. You don't have to eat perfectly starting today. You just have to start making choices that a healthy person would make. Take a 10-minute walk. Drink some water. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier. These small actions accumulate. They build momentum. And most importantly, they reinforce the new identity you're claiming. This is the pathway to transformation, not through some massive overhaul of your entire life all at once, but through consistent, daily choices that align with who you're becoming. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, has a phrase I love. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Think about that. Every single choice you make is a vote. Are you voting for the old you or the new you? Are you voting for limitation or possibility? Are you voting for fear or courage? And here's the thing about votes. Elections aren't won by landslides. They're won by consistent votes cast over time. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to win every moment. You just need to win more moments than you lose. You just need to cast more votes for the new you than for the old you. And over time, the election tilts in your favor. The new you wins. The new identity becomes your default. But I want to be honest with you about something. This journey is not easy. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that if you just change your mindset, everything will magically fall into place. That's not how life works. You're going to face obstacles. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have days where you feel like you're back at square one. And on those days, you're going to be tempted to give up. You're going to be tempted to say, see, I knew it wouldn't work. I knew I wasn't capable of change. But that's exactly when you need to remember who you really are. You're not someone who gives up. You're not someone who lets temporary setbacks define them. You're someone who keeps going. Someone who learns from failure. Someone who gets knocked down and gets back up. That's who you are. That's who you've decided to be. And let me tell you something about failure that nobody tells you. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than you've even tried. The difference is that they didn't let failure define them. They let it refine them. They extracted the lessons, adjusted their approach, and kept moving forward. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before he successfully invented the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Do you see the difference? He didn't see himself as a failure. He saw himself as someone who was learning, evolving, getting closer to success with every attempt. That's the mindset shift that changes everything. Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, was cut from his high school basketball team. Can you imagine? The man who would go on to win 6 NBA championships, who would become a global icon, was told he wasn't good enough to play high school basketball. And he could have believed that. He could have said, well, the coach said I'm not good enough, so I guess I'm not a basketball player. But instead, he used that rejection as fuel. He said, I have failed over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. You see, failure doesn't define you. How you respond to failure defines you. And when you've claimed a new identity, when you've decided who you truly are, failure becomes impossible. Because you're not trying to become something. You already are something. You're just learning how to express it more fully. I want to address something that might be holding some of you back right now. Some of you are thinking, but I've tried to change before and it didn't work. I've tried to be more confident, more successful, more healthy, and I always end up back where I started. Why would this time be different? And that's a fair question. Here's why. Because before, you were trying to change from the outside in. You were trying to change your behavior without changing your identity. You were trying to act like a different person while still being the same person. And that doesn't work. That's willpower. And willpower always runs out. But what we're talking about here is different. We're talking about changing from the inside out. We're talking about deciding who you are at the deepest level and then letting your actions flow naturally from that identity. When you change your identity, behavior change becomes effortless. Not easy, but effortless. There's a difference. It's not easy to work out every day, but for someone who identifies as an athlete, it's effortless. It's not easy to write every day, but for someone who identifies as a writer, it's effortless. It's not easy to take risks, but for someone who identifies as brave, it's effortless. This is the key distinction that most people miss. They're trying to force themselves to do things that don't align with their identity. And it's exhausting. It's like swimming upstream. But when your actions align with your identity, you're swimming downstream. You're in flow. And that's where transformation happens. Now, I want to talk about something that's going to be uncomfortable for some of you, but it's essential. You're going to have to leave some people behind. Not because you're better than them, not because they're bad people, but because transformation requires you to change your environment. And some people are invested in you staying the same. Think about it. If you've been the friend who always says yes, who always puts everyone else first, who never makes waves, and you suddenly start setting boundaries and prioritizing yourself, some people are not going to like that. They benefited from the old you. They liked the old you because the old you made them comfortable. And when you change, when you step into your power, you're holding up a mirror to their own limitations. And they don't want to see that. This is why crabs in a bucket pull each other down. When one crab tries to climb out, the others pull it back in. Not because they're malicious, but because if that crab escapes, it means they could too. And that's a terrifying realization when you've made peace with being trapped. So you need to understand that not everyone is going to